Inglourious Basterds movie review. So I'm going to start this one off with a little bit of a tangent. Back when I was in college, I went to a conservative Christian college, and I had an English professor at this school who was one of these people who blamed everything on violence in the media. So he thought that the crime rate, he thought that the school shootings, he thought that everything that was wrong with society, people's antisocial behavior, was all because they were watching too much violence in the media. And to be fair, I think this is a legitimate debate, which has been going on for years, but he was of the opinion there was no debate. He said anyone who thinks that this stuff has no effect on people, they're on the moon. The data is all supporting the fact that it's overwhelming that this has an effect on people's behaviors. And he would just go off quite frequently whenever something triggered him to talk about all the stuff he hated about today's media and how it was ruining kids' minds and ruining the culture, etc. So you can imagine how surprised I was when I found out that he was a big Pulp Fiction fan. He said in class one day, he said, "I once saw a movie that I almost walked out of. I thought it was violent, I thought it was crude, I thought it was tasteless, and then halfway through, I realized it was a satire. And then I had a great time after that." So this raises the question, when you're reviewing anything by Quentin Tarantino, do you take it on as face value, or do you view it as a satire on the movie industry, or as an homage to certain genres, etc.? This movie especially, more than any of his other movies, I think is problematic because it takes what's one of the greatest atrocities in human history and exploits it into a trashy fiction story. It also has a strong revenge theme, as in a lot of Quentin Tarantino stuff, and revenge, I believe, is not a very uplifting, healthy moral to be emphasizing. And I think, like a lot of Quentin Tarantino's work, there's an element of sadism here. Sadism, however you pronounce it, where the viewer is encouraged to take some sort of vicarious pleasure in somebody else's pain, which seems to be a rather disturbing reoccurring element in Quentin Tarantino's work. But then, do you take that as face value, or do you take that as this is him doing a homage to all the Nazi exploitation films? And lest we forget, I think this subject has gone through different phases in the past 80 years or so, where it's been a very touchy subject, and then at times when it's not been a touchy subject. I mean, I think it took a while for the Holocaust to have the impact on people that it does today, where immediately after World War II, the big emphasis, the big story was not what happened to the Jews. The big story was the American GIs fighting the Nazis. And that was true of a lot of the films in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, both where there were serious World War II stories, but where there were also not so serious World War II stories. The one that comes to mind the most is The Dirty Dozen, which, full disclosure, I actually have not seen the full thing. I caught the ending of The Dirty Dozen several years ago when it was on TV. But if you've seen the film The Dirty Dozen, or if you've just seen the ending like I do, the parallels in plot structure, or at least in the ending, between this and the Inglourious Basterds are so strong. In fact, they're so strong that I'm surprised not more people made the comparison when this movie came out. I mean, some people did, but I would have thought it would have been obligatory for every critic to say, of course, he's paying an homage to The Dirty Dozen. The Dirty Dozen, the ending scene, they're going after, if memory serves, there's a whole bunch of Nazi leaders that are all gathered in one party. So they want to get all these Nazi leaders in one party. Similar plot to the Inglourious Basterds. They get them all there at the end, and they've got them trapped in this room, and they're there with their wives. So it's not just like, it's not just these hard-boiled war criminals. It's women in there as well. And they got them trapped in the room, and they're trying to get out of the room and panicking, and then they drop these grenades in the room to kill them all, which was something. It's interesting if you read Roger Ebert's review of it at the time, because Roger Ebert was absolutely horrified by this movie and accused the movie in quite strong terms of sadism. So if Quentin Tarantino is just playing an homage to these types of movies that he grew up with in the 70s, then do we... I don't know. I guess the question I'm asking is, I think when you talk about World War II, there's World War II, what actually happened, and there's World War II as it's been portrayed in pop culture in all the exploitation movies of, I mean, really starting almost, well, even the war was still going on, but then continuing on in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Quentin Tarantino is obsessed with trashy pop culture, well, Pulp Fiction, really. So it was really probably only a matter of time before he worked his way around to this genre, which again is, in this day and age of political correctness, and I think as we've gotten more and more sensitive to the horrors of the Holocaust as time has gone on, it's more sensitive than it used to be. It wasn't always so sensitive if you look at the history of pop culture movies. So, I don't know. You can give him a pass on that or not. I'm inclined to give him a pass on that and say, okay, this isn't actually about World War II. This is a satire on World War II movies. Okay, with that element out of the way, talking about the movie itself. So by the time this movie came out, Tarantino already had a bit of a reputation. And I remember discussing this movie with my brother-in-law, or discussing Tarantino with my brother-in-law, before we actually watched the movie itself. So we picked it up at the DVD store, we were driving back home, and they're drilling again. Sorry, I'm going to attempt to continue. We were talking about the movie, we were talking about Tarantino itself, and I said, whenever I watch a Tarantino movie, I feel like I never know what he's going to do. So like with a normal movie, you figure, okay, well this is the main protagonist, they're going to be safe. This character is one of the innocents, so nothing's going to happen to them. This is the bad guy, so they're going to get what's coming to them. With Tarantino, you never really know. He is twisted enough that no character is safe. So the first time I watch a Tarantino movie, I am always on the edge of my seat because you never know what's going to happen next. Tarantino has somewhere along the line realized that he has this power over people. And I think he's built this up by building up his reputation over the years. And he takes full advantage of it in this movie by mercilessly drawing out every scene. And he knows that he has the power to do this and still keep you on the edge of your seats. So, as in every Quentin Tarantino movie, but especially in this one, the conversation lingers, it wanders, it goes off on unrelated tangents, it does anything but get to the point, and yet you watch it fascinated because you know at some point something is going to happen, and when it does, you have no idea what it's going to be. Now, in my opinion, as brilliant as this is, Quentin Tarantino overplays his hand at this slightly. At the beginning, these long drawn-out scenes are golden, and I was absolutely hooked. As the movie goes on, these long drawn-out scenes started to have less and less of an impact on me, or I started to have less and less patience with them. And I was talking to my brother-in-law, and he had the same opinion as me. So, in my humble opinion, what he should have done, Quentin Tarantino, is those scenes at the beginning, those were brilliant. But then as the movie went on, I think each scene should have picked up more and more momentum, so that by the time we get to the end of the movie, then at this point we shouldn't have these long drawn out tension scenes. Or vice versa. Maybe have a fast-paced movie and then draw it out more at the end. But I think you needed to change the pacing in here somewhere. What I would have done is have it long and drawn out, intense at the beginning, and then the momentum picks up the more you go through. As it was, near the end, I did start to get a little bit impatient with the movie. But whatever you want to say about Quentin Tarantino, his movies are always something different. I waste so much time watching formulaic movies, and I like formulaic movies to a certain degree, but after you watch so many formulaic movies, Quentin Tarantino is such a breath of fresh air. I was inclined to say for a while that his genius was probably overstated. Like, it's not that he's so genius, it's just that he's doing something different. And that's what gets him this great reputation. I say I was inclined to say that because I did think about it after a while. And then I thought to myself, actually, after Pulp Fiction in the 90s, there were a whole bunch of people trying to imitate Quentin Tarantino. And very few of them could pull it off. Or none of them could pull it off, depending on your opinion. So, you've got to give the man credit. Whatever he's doing it well, and nobody can do it the way he's doing it. So he must have a certain type of genius. Yeah, so, I guess in summary, you can decide to forgive the subject matter of this film or not. I've decided to largely give it a pass. I thought it was brilliantly done. It bored me a little bit near the end, but for the most part, it was a fascinating movie.